Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is part 1 of what if Naruto was in Sailor Moon and got a harem. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and also go and support the author, link in description. It was a rainy day in Jubin, a rural district of Tokyo, Japan. The residents of the city were running about in their daily lives, commuting to work, running errands, shopping, all while coping with the rain that comes from time to time. Among those who were walking along the sidewalk was the Sakino family, a typical Japanese couple with their 2 young children. Well, you can call them typical if you don't include the menagerie of different hair colors. The man of the household was one Sakino Kenji, a tall man with black hair cut at ear level, brown eyes, and wears a pair of black framed glasses. A typical salary man, Kenji worked at a magazine company as a reporter, earning a living for himself and his family. Usually he was hard at work, though that day he was enjoying a break with his family. Walking alongside him under the umbrella that Kenji was holding was Sakino Akuko, a model housewife with curly purple hair that flowed down her back with brown eyes like her husband. Cradled in Akuko's arms was 1-year-old Shingo, a small boy with brown hair and brown eyes matching his parents. The boy was sound asleep in his mother's arms as they walked down the sidewalk. The last member of the Sakino family was a little girl by the name of Usagi, a young 5-year-old with blonde hair done up into 2 large balls that one could describe as meatballs, with the ends of her hair trailing down in ponytails to her ankles. Her blue eyes along with her hair made her stand out in the family as being very different from the usual traits of the Sakino. Usagi sported a pink rain jacket, boots, and umbrella to match, and the family moved along from their evening of family dining and their return trip to home. Usagi was enjoying the rain as she trotted along from puddle to puddle, making sure to jump in them all as she went. Kenji noticed that his daughter was moving along a little bit quicker than he was comfortable with, since she was starting to pull away from the group. Usagi, don't get too far ahead now. Wait for your mother and I to catch up, Kenji said, calling out to his energetic child. Usagi stopped where she was, turned around and answered her father with a cheery smile. Okay, Papa. Akuko turned her head and smiled at her husband and spoke. Dearest, you know you don't always have to keep her so close to you. You should let her enjoy herself. You know that you're only a child once. Kenji sighed and looked at his lovely wife. I know, honey, but she is my daughter, so of course I worry about her getting hurt or lost. I just want to make sure she stays safe. Of course, dear, but that doesn't mean that you should keep her by your side all the time. Allow her to explore a bit from time to time. Akuko responded as they caught up with Usagi, and the girl resumed her quest to squash all the water goblins in the puddles. I guess you're right, but still I want her to stay close to us. Kenji then looked down at his young son. Shingo sure seems content. Akuko looked down and gave a motherly smile to the baby snoozing in her arms. After that bottle I gave him at dinner time, it's no wonder he's sleeping. He sure can eat a lot. Well, he is your son after all. Kenji scratched the back of his head. Hee. Good point. It was at that moment that the sound of trash cans being pushed over and into each other drew their attention forward. No more than 15 feet ahead of them, a small boy came stumbling out of an alleyway in a daze. The way he walked was a clear indication that the boy was in pain. The child got halfway across the sidewalk before collapsing onto the cold, wet concrete. The Sakino couple let out a gasp as they witnessed the boy fall down. The family quickly rushed over to the boy's side, and Kenji turned the boy to look at his face and lifted him up off the sidewalk. Akuko looked at the boy with concern, and Usagi looked on with a worried expression. The boy looked to be about the same age as Usagi, with spiky blonde hair and blue eyes, though they were a tad bit darker tint than the girl's was, but the most prominent feature was the 6 birthmarks adorning his face, 3 marks on each cheek that looked like whiskers, making him look fox-like. His clothes were in tatters and soaked with rain, and his body was covered in dirt and blood. Son, are you all right? Can you hear me? Speak to me. Kenji spoke out to the boy he held in his arms. The boy responded by cracking his eyes open and speaking in a whisper. Help me. The blonde spoke before closing his eyes again and falling into unconsciousness. Kenji cursed under his breath. He's pretty bad. We need to get him to a hospital. Kenji reached behind him and pulled out his cell phone and proceeded to contact emergency services. Akuko looked very concerned about the young boy. She had to wonder what a child his age was doing out in the rain all alone and why he was so badly injured. She looked around to see if anyone was looking for him, but it appeared that they were the only ones on the street at the time. As she looked at the young boy lying on the ground, she noticed the similarity between the boy and her own daughter, Usagi. Just imagining her little girl in this state made her shiver. It was not long before the paramedics arrived and the boy was placed on a gurney and pulled inside the ambulance. Being concerned for the boy as well as being asked to come along to give a statement about the incident, the Sakino family boarded the ambulance and everyone was on their way to the nearest hospital. Jubin Secondary General Hospital. The Sakino family was waiting patiently in the waiting area of the ER ward, hoping to find out the condition of the young boy whom they had rescued. It had been nearly half an hour since they had arrived and the boy was wheeled into the ER. As the hospital staff started to assess the extent of his injuries and begin treating them, Kenji sat in deep thought as he held Usagi. Said girl was sitting in her father's lap thinking about the boy that she saw. Akuko sat beside them still cradling the sleeping Shingo. The child had stirred during the ambulance ride and was a tad unsettled by the current events. Akuko had finally managed to calm him down and back to sleep. She too was worried about the boy they had saved and wondered just where in the world he had come from and where his parents were. Who in the world would leave a child out there in the cold rain? The thought ran through her mind as she waited. Usagi looked up to her father and spoke, "Papa, is that boy going to be alright?" Kenji broke away from his thoughts and looked at his only daughter with a smile. "He will be just fine, sweetie. The people here are taking good care of him," Kenji assured his daughter with a rub on the head, to which the girl responded with a smile. The man then went back into thought as he recalled the sight of the boy when he first saw him. The boy was covered extensively with several cuts and bruises. Kenji had seen wounds like that on children and he had a suspicion of what or rather who might have caused them. Thoughts of that happening to any child always angered him and this time was no exception as a slight scowl appeared on his face. It was not long before the family was approached by one of the hospital doctors. The doctor was a woman with deep blue hair and eyes with her hair cut at neck length. She wore a dress that fit her profession as a physician, while also wearing a doctor's overcoat completing her attire. She walked up to the group and introduced herself. "Hello, I'm Dr. Mizuno Seiko. I understand that you are the ones that found that young boy, correct?" The Sakino couple nodded. "Yes, we found the boy while we were returning home after our outing," Kenji informed the doctor. "Is the child going to be alright?" Akuko asked as the doctor flipped through several charts and pages of notes she had attached to a clipboard. "I believe he will be just fine after a little rest. We have treated the injuries on him and the x-rays we took show no broken bones or internal bleeding. He will be able to leave the hospital in a day or so," Seiko informed. The Sakino couple let out a sigh of relief. Usagi also felt relieved that the boy was going to get better soon. Kenji then decided to ask Dr. Mizuno a question. "Dr. Mizuno, I know that it's not really my business to ask, but how do you think the boy got those injuries?" The doctor looked at Kenji. "It is against policy to discuss information concerning a patient with those who are not related or do not have patient consent. I understand that. However, those injuries he had were too numerous to be accidental, and we can rule out an animal attack since those were not bite or claw marks. It doesn't take a genius to figure out what was responsible for hurting that boy." Seiko saw the scowl on Mr. Tsukino's face when he finished the sentence. Being a doctor for many years, she had seen her fair share of injuries and could determine how they were inflicted. As soon as she saw the child, she could tell that this was a case of child abuse, and it was cases like that which riled her tremendously. As a mother herself, she found the idea of willingly hurting a child to be absolutely inhuman. "Alright, since you were the ones that found him and as a fellow parent, I guess I can tell you what I believe to be the cause," Seiko conceded as the Kenji waited to confirm his suspicion. "In my opinion, the injuries that the child received indicate he has suffered from long-term abuse. The cuts and bruising appear to caused by both sharp and blunt objects, and the light scarring on him show that he has been subjected to injuries like these for quite some time. Who exactly is responsible for this is unknown, but I hope that once the boy wakes up he will be able to tell us who did this to him." Kenji nodded in agreement. The boy may not be his own, but he was not going to sit by and let such a cruel act go unpunished. If he ever got a hold of the ones who did this to him, he would ensure that they would regret ever touching the boy. Akuko was stunned at what she had heard. The idea of hurting a child even accidentally appalled her. She had caringly and lovingly tended to her children and did everything she could to ensure that they were healthy and happy. For someone to willingly harm that boy and do so over a long period of time was an act that went against everything she believed as a mother. She wished that she could do something for the poor boy to ease the pain he was no doubt experiencing, both physically and mentally. It was then that one of the nurses approached Dr. Mizuno and addressed her. Doctor, we have just moved the patient into the recovery area. We believe that he will be awakening shortly. Seiko nodded to the nurse. Thank you for informing me. I will check on him when he wakes up. The nurse bowed to Seiko and returned to the nurse's station to resume her duties. Seiko then turned back to the family and spoke. Well, shall we go and greet the boy when he awakes? I'm sure he'll want to know who it was who saved him. The couple nodded and stood up. The Sakino family and Seiko then proceed to the recovery area to await the awakening of the boy who could possibly give them some answers to the many questions they had. ER. Recovery Room 14. The boy was lying in a hospital bed in one of the recovery rooms of the hospital. His body was cleaned up and covered in bandages as the medicine and disinfectants went to work on his wounds. The boy was still unconscious but was showing signs of awakening as his head slowly turned from one side to the other. As he began to stir, his mind started to recall various memories, none more so vivid as his most recent, the very event that led him to the situation he was now in. Flashback. The Elemental Nations, Konoha 2 hours ago. The young boy was currently walking back to his home alongside a tall old man with gray hair, a well-wrinkled face and a goatee. He was dressed in a crimson kimono with a white coat and a pyramid-shaped hat with the symbol for Hokage or Fire Shadow, written on the front. The old man was Hiruzen Sarutobi, third Hokage of Konoha and the current escort of the young boy after yet another unpleasant encounter with the village's more overzealous members. As the boy nursed his newest set of bruises, the old man turned to him. It seems you had another hectic day today, Naruto. I must say that with all of the fights you get into, I'm surprised you can still walk. Sarutobi spoke while smiling to the blonde boy. Naruto hissed as he rubbed one of the bruises on his left arm. Ah, I'm alright Gigi, it will take more than those guys can throw at me to keep me down. Naruto replied as he gave a cocky grin to the Hokage. I just wish I knew why they always try to beat me up and call me names. Sarutobi sighed as he walked with the blonde child. He knew exactly why the villagers taunted and attacked Naruto every chance they could get. Naruto was the unfortunate target of the village's aggression because he was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko, the nine-tailed demon fox. When the nine-tail attacked the village 5 years ago, it was sealed within Naruto as a means to contain and control it. This event earned Naruto the village's hatred and malice since they saw the boy as the reincarnation of the demon. Sarutobi had hoped that the village would honor and praise Naruto as the sacrifice that contained the beast and would hold him in high regard, but instead he was ostracized, abandoned and ridiculed. No one cared for him and he was forced to grow up without love or affection and had to endure the village's harsh treatment as well as frequent beatings. Sarutobi sighed again as they continued their walk towards Naruto's home. He felt great sympathy for the young child and marveled at his strength for being able to endure such treatment for so long at such a young age. He wished with all his heart that Naruto would find someone who would give him the love and care that he so rightfully deserved. Naruto and Sarutobi eventually reached the boy's home. Since Naruto had no parents, he naturally lived alone with Sarutobi being his only visitor when the old man was not tending to his duties as Hokage, his most tedious and mind-numbing duty being the Hokage's evilest of all enemies, paperwork. The Hokage led the boy inside and tended to his newest set of war wounds. As soon as Naruto was bandaged up and given a proper meal, since Sarutobi insisted that Naruto not practically live on instant ramen, he led the blonde to his bed for the night. Sarutobi tucked the boy in and started for the door. Gigi, thank you for always taking care of me. I wish I had parents who were as nice as you. Naruto spoke as Sarutobi walked out the door and turned back to smile at the blonde. You're very welcome, Naruto. And don't worry, I'm sure that one day you will find a couple that will show you the same kindness that I have shown you. Just keep wishing for it with all your heart and I'm sure you will find them someday. With that, Sarutobi closed the door and left Naruto to dream of better days. Sarutobi left the home and began to walk back to the Hokage Tower, Unaware that both he and Naruto had been watched from the shadows as a man dressed in black shinobi armor while wearing an animal mask now began to creep towards the home of the unsuspecting blonde. Naruto was sleeping peacefully, dreaming of having the kind of family that other children possessed. The times he had watched the families of children his age had made him envious of the closeness they showed to one another. He longed to feel the warmth of the embrace between a parent and child. Even the joy of having a sibling was desired by the boy, and he wished that he could one day be part of a family just like the ones he watched from the shadows that hid him from the sight of the cruel villagers. His blissful slumber was interrupted by the sound of shattered glass and a heavy object hitting the floor of his home. Naruto shot up from his bed to find a man wearing an animal mask staring at him from a prone position on the floor. The man suddenly lunged forward and tried to grab the boy, however Naruto was quick to evade the man as he rolled to the side then dashed towards the door in an attempt to escape. The masked man however was much faster than the boy as he easily closed the distance between them and grabbed Naruto from behind. "Let go. Let me go, you creep." Naruto shouted out as he struggled to escape his assailant's grasp. Seeing as his strength alone could not free him from the man, Naruto decided to bite down on the man's arm in an attempt to free himself. The man cried out in pain as Naruto bit down with all of his strength. "You damn fox brat, that hurt." The man hit Naruto causing him to roll across the floor. The broken glass on the floor cut the boy's skin leaving a small trail of blood as Naruto rolled. The masked man walked over to the boy and glared at him. "I'm going to make you pay for hurting me." The man spoke as he proceeded to kick the helpless boy, adding even more injuries and pain to the poor child. Once satisfied that the boy was no longer going to fight back, the masked man picked up the blonde and fled into the night. Inside a large room hidden from the eyes of the world, a man with a bandaged face waited patiently. His demeanor showed that this was a man who had dark intentions. Silently a masked man appeared in the room with a bloody and beaten boy under his arm. "Lord Danzo, I have brought you the boy as you have ordered." The masked man spoke as he laid the boy down on the stone table in the center of the room. Danzo turned to his personal Anbu shinobi and nodded. "I take it no one saw you abduct the boy. No one must interfere with this ritual." Danzo spoke as he walked over to the table that Naruto was now laid upon. "Of course, my lord." Danzo looked at Naruto with a level of disgust. Like the other villagers, he viewed the boy as the incarnation of the fox that destroyed his home 5 years ago. "I see you decided to do a little torture on the boy before we get rid of him," Danzo said, noting the fresh cuts and bruises on the blonde while placing a immobility paper seal on the boy's chest. "Ha! It's nothing the fox brat doesn't deserve," the Anbu shinobi replied. "Indeed." Naruto then began to stir. The young blonde opened his eyes and took in his new surroundings. From what he could tell, he was in a large room with stone walls with several candles bathing the room in a soft glow. He was lying on a stone table with a seal array marked out in a pattern on the surface surrounding him. Naruto then tried to move but found that he could move his body as a seal tag was attached to him. As he tried harder to move, he heard a voice speak to him. "It is useless to try to move. Your body has been immobilized by that seal." Naruto turned to find a man wearing bandages over his head glaring at him. Just behind him was the masked Anbu that had broken into his home and kidnapped him. The way the two of them looked and the fact that he was immobilized and being prepared for some type of ritual did not sit well with the blonde youth. "Why did you to bring me here? I didn't do anything to you. Let me go." Naruto pleaded with the two men, fearful that they were going to seriously hurt him. However, the men were unmoved by the boy's cries as they moved into position at the circle. "You can cry all you want to, it still won't help you since we are going to deal with you permanently. After today, you will no longer exist." Danzo spoke to the boy. Naruto's face went pale as he tried to break away from the seal that held with renewed vigor. Try as he might, he could not move a finger. Naruto's eyes watered up as he realized that there was no escape for him. "Why are you doing this to me? I've never hurt anyone. Please, let me go. I'm scared. Let me go." Naruto begged as tears streamed down his face. Danzo just glared at the child with hatred. He was not going to be swayed by this creature's plea for mercy. It was then that 4 other Anbu shinobi appeared in the room and bowed to Danzo. "Everything is ready, my lord. The array has been completed and there is no one near the area." One of the arriving Anbu spoke. Danzo turned to the four shinobi and nodded. Excellent, take your places, we are beginning the ritual. Danzo and the five Anbu took their places at the corners of the seal array. Naruto continued to cry and struggle against the paper seal while the shinobi prepared themselves. The group then proceeded to make a series of hand signs as Danzo spoke out the name for each sign. Ne, Tora, Uma, Mi, Suru, Inu, I, Tori, Tatsu, Yu, Ushi, Ne, Uma, Suru, I, Inu, Hitsuji. The seal array then began to glow while Naruto thrashed about in a state of panic. Jigen no Suiho Jutsu. 1. The whole room was then bathed in a bright light as the seal's power was fully activated. Naruto screamed out in pain as he could feel every part of him being ripped apart piece by piece. He could feel himself fading away as the light in the room became brighter and brighter until his vision was completely blinded by a sea of white. End flashback. Naruto shot up from his position on the bed he was currently occupying, panting heavily as he tried to make sense of his situation. He was in a white room with curtains closing him off from most of the room. He saw that he was wearing a white gown, covered in bandages with a tube of some kind stuck to his left arm running up to a bag of clear liquid being held up on a rod and wires from his right arm and chest leading to a device that had a green line that jumped up and down and made a beep every second or so. Naruto looked at himself, making sure that he was all there with the memory of the ritual still fresh in his mind. He could not believe he was still alive, as he had feared that the ritual was supposed to destroy him, and he breathed easier to see himself in one piece, albeit a little worse for wear with all the bandages on his body. Seeing that he was fine at the moment, Naruto turned his attention back to his surroundings. From what he could tell, he was in a hospital since he had visited one a few times in the past, what with all the beatings he had endured in his youth, but this place felt strange to him. It looked nothing like the hospitals that he had been in previously, and the weird machines and other objects he had never seen before made him uneasy about his situation. Just where the heck am I? Naruto thought as he continued to look about the room. Suddenly, the curtain was pulled back to reveal a blue-haired woman in a white coat looking at him. Naruto turned to look at the female doctor and blushed a bit as this woman was pretty in his opinion. Right behind her a group came into view as a man with black hair with glasses, a woman with long purple hair holding a baby, and a young girl with blonde hair followed the doctor into the room. The doctor walked up to his bed and smiled. Hello there, young man, I'm glad to see you're finally awake. I'm Dr. Mizuno Seiko, can you tell me what your name is? The brunette doctor asked the blonde boy as the group following her sat down in the available chairs. The boy looked about at the group of people he suddenly found himself with. He studied them all for a brief moment before answering the doctor's question. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, ma'am. Seiko jotted the name down on the clipboard holding all of the information she had on the blonde boy and looked back at the boy still holding her smile. Well, it's nice to meet you, Uzumaki-san. Can you tell me what happened to you and where you live? The Sakino couple listened in closely so they could understand what happened to the boy they found. Well, I live in a small home that Gigi gave to me since I don't have a home of my own, but a guy in a mask broke in and took me to a place where a man in bandages said he was going to get rid of me, then I saw a bright light and that's all I can remember. Naruto replied as Seiko wrote down the information he was supplying to her. Naruto then decided to ask a question of his own. Where exactly am I, ma'am? Seiko looked up from the clipboard to answer the boy. You are in Jubin Secondary General Hospital. Jubin. I've never heard that name before, where is that? Seiko stopped her writing and looked at the blonde with confusion. Jubin is a prefect of Tokyo. She replied. Tokyo. What kind of a name for a village is that? Seiko now looked at Naruto completely dumbfounded. How could this boy not know about the nation's capital? Thinking in line of the questions, she decided to test one more question before answering the boy's own. At least tell me that you know what Japan is. Naruto thought about it for a second before saying, nope, not a clue. Seiko slumped down until her hands were on the bed as she tried to comprehend the fact that this boy did not know things that even kids his age would consider basic knowledge. The Sakino couple was in a similar state of mind as they were questioning the boy's education, or lack thereof. Seiko finally looked up to the boy and spoke to him in a serious tone. Uzumaki-san, how could you not know what your home country is? Hadn't you parents taught you anything? It was then that Naruto's face became sullen and downcast as he spoke in what was barely over a whisper. I don't have any parents. That got the attention of the room's occupants real quick. Seiko stared at Naruto for a second before snapping herself out of her shock and spoke. Wait, didn't you say you had a grandfather? Naruto looked up and replied, the old man isn't related to me, although he is the only thing I have that is even remotely close to a parent, but he's usually busy with work and I don't see him very often. Usually he just gives me some money and checks up on me from time to time, but... Naruto drew his legs up to his chest and wrapped his arms around them while looking back down again. I don't have anyone to take care of me, I'm all alone. Talk about tugging on a heartstring. Everyone in the room was suddenly feeling very sympathetic for the boy and wanted to do something for him, no more so than Akuko, whose maternal instincts were now running in sixth gear with overdrive. Hearing the child saying he had no parents and seeing the evidence of his treatment by people made her want to do everything in her power to give this child any amount of happiness she could possibly give him. Kenji was feeling really bad for the boy since he had seen some cases of orphans living on the street and he didn't want to see Naruto end up like those poor kids with nowhere to turn. Sure, there were orphanages that took kids in when they could. But most of them were overcrowded or were not ideal for taking care of children. Kenji then recalled the wounds he saw on Naruto and wanted to know something about them. Uzumaki-san, could you tell me who were the ones who gave you those injuries? Kenji spoke up, gaining the attention of the blonde boy. Naruto looked at the man before looking back down with an expression of pain on his face. Everyone. The adults in the room went wide-eyed from the statement. What do you mean by, everyone, sweetie? Akuko asked. Everyone hates me. Naruto started to cry as he recalled the pain he felt when he was being treated badly, getting beaten up, and the worst of all, being isolated from everyone. Everyone calls me bad names, they hurt me, and they ignore me when I need someone. I can't make any friends because the grown-ups won't let the other kids play with me. Nobody likes me. Nobody cares for me. Naruto cried as he pulled his legs closer to his chest and buried his head into his arms. I keep hearing them call me Fox Brat or Fox Kid or some other bad names. I hate it. Why can't anyone treat me nicely? Why doesn't anyone care for me? Seiko felt her heart sink seeing the boy in that state. She could tell he was hurt not just physically, but emotionally as well. There were some wounds that no amount of medicine or medical technology could mend. She then decided she was going to do everything she could to help the child overcome the pains in his life. Kenji felt terrible for Naruto. He wanted to do something for the boy as well as find the ones who had the nerve to treat a child so badly. As he wondered what could possess people to do such things, he recalled that the boy had whisker-like birthmarks on his cheeks, giving him a fox-like appearance. Perhaps the people were superstitious, believing him to be a fox demon or something like that. However, that was no excuse to treat a little boy that way and swore that if he ever found the ones who did this. As for Akuko, she had heard enough. This poor boy was crying out for someone to show him love and affection, and both her mind and heart were now set. She knew exactly what she was going to do and nothing was going to stop her. Akuko turned to her husband and spoke to the brooding man. Kenji dear, can I speak with you outside for a moment? Kenji snapped out of his thoughts and looked at his wife curiously. Huh? Oh, sure honey. Kenji and Akuko stood up and turned to the door. Dr. Mizuno, could you keep an eye on Usagi while we talk about something real quick? Akuko asked since Usagi had conveniently fallen asleep shortly after they had arrived in the room. Seiko looked up at the purplete from where she had sat down beside the boy and rubbed his back to comfort the still crying boy. Of course, Mrs. Sakino. Outside room 14. You want us to what? Kenji all but screamed out after hearing his wife's declaration. I said I want us to adopt Uzumaki Naruto. Akuko stated again to ensure that she and her husband were on the same page. Kenji stared at his wife in disbelief before asking, why? Why us? I'm sure that someone would happily take care of him. Kenji felt the need to do something for the boy, but not something as big as adopting him into the family. Akuko spoke with conviction. Dear, the boy has gone through a terrible life. He needs parents who can show him the love he needs, and I can't think of anyone who can do this better than the two of us. He needs to be loved now, and we are the ones who are going to give it to him. But honey, we already have Usagi and Shingo to take care of, and our money is already being strained just with the four of us. I'm sure that someone will come along and take Naruto in. I think you should kind of step back and look at. Kenji tried to reason with his wife on the subject but was stopped in his tracks when Akuko gave Kenji a very rare deadpan look that showed she was not taking no for an answer. Akuko was always a sweet and caring woman and rarely ever argued with her husband on matters, but when she did have her mind set on something and was not going to give it up, she would put on this look and anyone on the receiving end knew that they needed to shut up, listen and agree to the young housewife. Akuko stood there holding her expression for a minute, making sure that Kenji got the point that she was not going to back down until she finally spoke with total conviction in her voice as she slowly spoke the words, Kenji. We are adopting him. Kenji tried to counter but knew that it was useless when his wife was like this. After a few moments Kenji finally accepted defeat as he sighed and looked at his wife with a small smile. Alright, we'll adopt him. I guess I could ask my boss for a raise to cover. Akuko smiled brightly and kissed her husband on the cheek. Thank you, dearest. Kenji and Akuko went back inside the room where Seiko had just laid Naruto back down so he could rest more and told the doctor of their intention to take the boy into their family. Seiko was relieved to hear this as she too was hoping to help Naruto find a good home with foster parents who would care for him. She was very tempted to take the boy in herself, however she already had a daughter and her job often kept her away from her so taking care of a boy who needed to be given a lot of attention would have been very difficult for her so this was a welcome turn of events for her. She informed them that it would take several days to make the arrangements for him to be adopted since they had to go through child services in order to make it official, but she assured them that they would be able to adopt him as soon as possible. The elemental nation's Konohagakure. Meanwhile, Sarutobi sat in his office brooding over the current situation. He had been returning to his office when a shinobi guard informed him of the disturbance and kidnapping of Uzumaki Naruto by an Anbu who was known to be loyal to Shimura Danzo, which when Sarutobi realized that when Danzo was involved it was not for charity for the blonde boy. He immediately mobilized a small security team to rescue Naruto from whatever Danzo had planned for him. However, just when they arrived to liberate the abducted youth they had made it in time to witness the completion of Danzo's ritual and the complete vanishing of Uzumaki Naruto from the elemental nations. Sarutobi immediately had Danzo and all of his Anbu collaborators arrested and had them imprisoned for kidnapping, use of a forbidden jutsu and the disappearance of Naruto. When Sarutobi asked Danzo why he made Naruto vanish off the face of Earth, Danzo replied that he was serving Konoha by permanently removing the Kyuubi no Yoko in a way that would ensure that it would never be resurrected again. Sarutobi knew that Danzo was among those that believed that Naruto was an incarnation of the Kyuubi, however he never thought that Danzo would do what he did. Now Sarutobi was doing everything he could to locate and return the missing blonde who was like a grandchild to him. He had recovered the details of the jutsu that Danzo had used and studied them to find out exactly where he had sent Naruto but the scrolls gave no indication of where the destination of the jutsu was. Sarutobi sighed as he awaited one of his loyal ninjas to return from investigating the circle that was used in the ritual that sent Naruto away to another dimension. Sarutobi could not but worry about the boy he had watched over for the past 5 years and hoped that Naruto was alright, wherever he was. It was then that the shinobi in question arrived. Hitaki Kakashi arrived in the Hokage's office after being sent to examine the circle that teleported Naruto to see if there was a way to reverse the jutsu and bring the blonde back. He was a Jonin-level shinobi with silver hair worn upwards in long spikes with his Hite 8 worn on his forehead to keep his hair up as well as cover his left eye. He also wore a face mask that kept his lower face covered. His clothing consisted of the traditional green Jonin uniform worn by the shinobi of the village. Kakashi bowed down to the aged Hokage and spoke. Lord Hokage, I have finished investigating the scene where Danzo performed the ritual. Sarutobi looked up and spoke to the Jonin. What have you learned about the seal used to send Uzumaki Naruto away? Have you found a means to summon him back? Kakashi closed his exposed eye and replied to the Hokage's question. No, my lord, from what my team and I have been able to learn from the scrolls we discovered in the room, the jutsu was designed to send Uzumaki to another plane of existence separate from our own. Unfortunately, the scrolls do not specify where Uzumaki was sent, and since all traces of his chakra have completely disappeared, it is impossible to reverse summon him back to the village. I am sorry Lord Hokage, but we must consider Uzumaki Naruto to be lost to us. Sarutobi was saddened by this. He had hoped to undo the damage that Danzo had done and bring the boy he considered to be a grandson back, but no, it seemed that this would not be possible. The Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko, Uzumaki Naruto, was gone. Thank you for investigating, Hitaki Kakashi. We will continue to look into ways to recover Naruto until all resources have been used. You may return to your assigned duties. Kakashi bowed before disappearing in a whirlwind of leaves, leaving Sarutobi to think about the events that had transpired. Sarutobi turned and looked out the window to see the sun rising from the horizon. He thought about the boy that he had taken care of for the past few years and imagined what could have been the life for the blonde had he not been banished from this world. He had hoped to watch the boy grow up and learn the ways of the ninja like many of the village's youth. He had seen much promise in the boy and wanted to see just how far he would go in the world of the shinobi and maybe someday rise to become a Hokage himself. Now it would seem that this was no longer possible. Sarutobi hoped that wherever Naruto was now, he was safely in a better place and prayed to the gods that in this strange new world he was in, he would at last find peace. Jubin, Tokyo 5 days later. The Sakino family was traveling down the street in the family car on their way to the Mizuno house to pick up the newest addition to their family. A few days before the Sakino couple had submitted their formal request with child services to adopt Uzumaki Naruto, and with Dr. Seiko Mizuno's support and influence with the services, she was a doctor that had ties with child services, the family was cleared and approved for taking the boy into their house and family name. After Naruto was discharged from the hospital a day after he was brought in, which Seiko commented on the boy's healing ability as being nothing short of amazing, the good doctor decided to take temporary custody of the blonde while the authorities processed the Sakino family's adoption request. This gave Seiko time to observe Naruto to see if his abuse had left him with any psychological disorders, of which Seiko noted that he was perfectly fine, much to her relief. When the Sakino couple had gotten the word that the adoption was approved, they quickly made arrangements with Seiko to pick up Naruto after they purchased some necessities for the child, such as furniture and supplies to suit the 5-year-old child, and since they happened to have a spare bedroom available at the time, they quickly converted it into what would be the boy's new bedroom. After all of the preparations were made for the family newcomer, they left to pick up Naruto. Usagi was sitting in her seat behind Ikuko as Shingo was sleeping away in his child's seat behind Kenji, who was driving the vehicle to its destination. Papa, where are we going? Usagi asked as she kicked her feet back and forth during the ride. She had been perplexed by the sudden activity in the house as her parents worked on making the spare room that used to hold the family's unused items into a sleeping quarter over the course of a day and found herself riding in the car with her family at the time. Kenji looked up into the rear-view mirror to see his only daughter and smiled at his pride and joy. We have a special surprise for you, Usagi. Kenji spoke, wanting to give his daughter some wonderment before revealing the intention of their trip. How would you like to have another brother, one your age? He asked. Usagi's face lit up with the thought. Really? I'd like that. I always wanted someone to play with. Well, guess what? We're on our way right now to get him. We're going to have another member of our family, Usagi, one that can keep you company. Kenji informed the blonde child as he turned down another street. Ikuko turned in her seat to look at Usagi and smiled as well. That's right, sweetie, our family is going to get a little bigger and you get to have someone who can play with you. Usagi became excited as she thought of having a playmate she could interact with while her mother and father were busy with their work, Ikuko's being around the house and Kenji's at his job. She could get kind of lonely having no one around to play and laugh with. It was not long before they arrived at their destination as their car pulled up in front of the home of Mizuno Seiko. Kenji and Ikuko got out of the vehicle and walked to the front door of the house while Usagi was asked to wait in the car with Shingo since her parents told her they were not going to be away for very long. The couple walked up to the house and rang the doorbell. They did not have to wait long when Seiko opened the door and greeted the Sakino couple with a warm smile. Hello Mr. and Mrs. Sakino, it's nice to see you again. The Sakino couple bowed and returned the greeting. Hello to you as well, Dr. Mizuno. We are here to pick up Naruto. Is he ready to go? Kenji asked. Yes, he's just saying goodbye to my daughter before he leaves. It was then that Naruto came down the stairs and stopped beside Seiko to look at the couple who had come to get him. Seiko turned and addressed the blonde boy. Naruto, these are the people I told you about. They will be the ones taking care of you from now on. Kenji and Akuko bowed to the boy. Hello Naruto, do you remember us? Kenji asked as Akuko gave the most heart-filled smile she could give to her new adopted son. Naruto nodded. You were the ones that found me and got me to the hospital. Thank you for saving me. Naruto replied sheepishly while offering a small bow. Kenji returned the gesture with a small bow of his own. It's not a problem, son. Anyone would have done the same. So, are you ready to start your new life with us? Naruto nodded his head. I guess so. Naruto picked up a small bag of clothing and supplies Seiko had gotten him for his stay and turned to the doctor. Thank you for taking care of me for a while. Naruto gave a respectful bow to Seiko in which she responded with one of her own. You're welcome Naruto. Now if you need any help with anything, just call me, alright. Naruto nodded and bid the good doctor goodbye as he left the house for his new home in this new world he was in. Peeking out from behind the curtains of her second-floor bedroom, Mizuno Amy looked at the blonde boy that she had been living with for the last few days and watched as he was loaded into the car of the family that he was now going to be a part of. The little girl only knew Naruto for a short time, but she had come to like the orphaned boy and had wished that he was able to stay and live with her and her mother. It was rather lonely being an only child and had really come to like having someone else to play with while her mother was working at the hospital. Naruto had promised her that he would come see her from time to time, and that made her feel a bit better as she watched the car Naruto was in pull away from the house. Naruto found himself in the back seat of the Sakino family car alongside a blonde girl around his own age and a young boy no more than a year old snoozing in the car seat to his left. Usagi turned to the boy she sat beside and introduced herself. Hi, my name is Usagi, what's yours? Naruto. The boy answered as he looked at the energetic blonde that he sat beside. He noticed that the two of them had very similar features, the only difference was his color tones were a bit darker. Usagi smiled. Nice to meet you, Naruto. Are you going to be my new brother? Naruto nodded. Yeah, I think so. Hooray, I've always wanted a playmate. Usagi cheered. Can I call you Naruto-ni then? Naruto blushed a little at the affectionate suffix that Usagi had given him and replied, sure, I guess I can call you Usagi-ni-chan then, huh? I really like that, I'm so happy to have you as a brother, Naruto-ni. Usagi cheerfully replied as she suddenly hugged Naruto, causing the boy to blush even harder. He was not used to this much affection after being neglected and hated for so long. Kenji and Akuko smiled as they listened to the exchange in the backseat of the car. It seemed that their daughter had taken an instant liking to the boy, though they knew it would not be that difficult for her given her personality, she always could make friends easily. The trip back to the Sakino house was rather uneventful other than the question and answer trading that was going on between the two youths, and soon the family made its way back home. The family exited the vehicle and proceeded to the house, with Naruto bringing up the rear as he examined the exterior of the home. He found it to be quite nice as Kenji opened the front door and the rest of the family entered. Naruto found himself a bit reluctant and nervous as he approached the entrance of the house while the family waited patiently for him to enter. It's all right Naruto, come inside. This is your new home, dear. Akuko sweetly spoke as Kenji nodded, Usagi smiled, and Shingo stared at the boy from his mother's arms. Naruto looked at the family that was in front of him, truly realizing that his wishes were finally coming true. Uzumaki Naruto, the orphaned boy that no one wanted, the child that was hated by all and was never given any kindness and compassion from anyone other than a select few, was finally getting a good home with a loving family. His eyes moistened as he took the last few steps forward and entered his new home. I'm home. Naruto said as he was barely able to hold back the tears that he threatened to shed from happiness. Welcome home. The Sakinos chorused as they welcomed Naruto into their house and family. As the door to the Sakino family home closed, a figure stood atop a house on the other side of the street. The person was a woman with long flowing green hair and wore a sailor-style fuku and skirt, wielding a long staff shaped as a large key and had an ornate crystal ball on the top. The woman looked at the house and smiled. So, he has finally arrived. Now destiny can move forward. The woman thought as she turned and began to walk away. Grow up strong, Uzumaki Naruto. And with that, the woman disappeared into thin air. Naruto. Naruto, wake up. Ugan. Sakino Uzumaki Naruto, wake up. You're going to be late for school. Alright mom, I'm up. Naruto sat up in bed and rubbed the sleep out of his eyes. Giving a big yawn, he got up and went to preparing for another day in his life. The 14-year-old boy stripped himself of his sleepwear and put on his school uniform. He then proceeded out of his room and into the bathroom for his daily hygiene, brushing his teeth, combing his hair, deodorant, the works. Afterwards, he made his way downstairs and into the kitchen where he was greeted by his mother, Akuko. She was just finishing up breakfast for her children as well as the box lunches they would need later. Akuko made sure that her children ate proper meals, especially Naruto, as she found out that the boy had an inhuman craving for ramen. When she learned that it was all the child ate before he was adopted, she swore that she would have him eat more balanced meals so he would grow up healthy. And it was thanks to her that Naruto grew to 5 feet minus 8 inches, a head taller than most boys his age. Morning, Mom. Naruto greeted with a warm smile as he sat down at the table for his breakfast. Akuko turned around from the counter where she was reading the newspaper and returned the warm smile with one of her own. Good morning, Naruto. Did you sleep good last night? Naruto yawned a little before replying to her question. Not too bad, though I could use a little more. Naruto began to eat his food as his eyes drooped a little from the amount of sleep he had. Well, you would have gotten a lot more sleep if you hadn't stayed up late reading manga. Both you and your sister have a bad habit of doing that on school nights. Akuko stated in the matter-of-fact tone that mothers would use when they wanted to lecture their children on certain etiquette. Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly as he knew she was right. He did have a habit of staying up late to read manga and he knew that he needed to stop doing that as it would make it easier for him to get up in the morning, but damn if those things weren't addicting. It was then that Kenji came into the kitchen and greeted the two family members. Morning honey, morning son. He said as he adjusted his tie while he walked over to kiss his wife and grab a piece of toast that Akuko had prepared. Morning dear, off to work already? Akuko asked as she continued to read the paper. Yeah, I got a big day today at work so I'm heading out now. Kenji said as he munched down on the toast before heading for the door. Don't work too hard, Dad. Naruto spoke up as he continued eating his morning meal. Kenji turned back to his eldest son and smiled. I won't, Naruto. You have a good day at school and keep an eye on your sister, okay? Kenji spoke as he headed out the door. No sooner did Kenji leave when Shingo came scooting around the corner and into the kitchen, stopping beside Naruto. Morning mom, morning bro. I see sis hasn't made it down yet. Shingo said as he grabbed some breakfast stuff to make a sandwich out of. Naruto sighed a bit as he kept eating. Nope, she'll probably be down at the last minute and getting herself ready in a frenzy like she usually does. In fact, she should be getting up right about. Ooga. Oh no, I'm gonna be late again. Now. Shingo let out a sigh as he quickly downed his compact breakfast and headed for the door. Meanwhile Usagi was in that frenzy that Naruto talked about as she madly got herself dressed and ran downstairs and dashed past the kitchen. Mama. Why didn't you wake me up earlier? Usagi asked as she furiously brushed her teeth. Akuko sighed. I did sweetie, 3 times, but every time you said you were getting up. And you believed me. Oh, morning Naruto ni. Usagi said as she feverishly worked to get herself ready. Morning, Usagi ni-chan. Cutting it a little close again, aren't we? Naruto teased as he finished his meal and got up. Hey, don't pick on me. You wake up late sometimes too, you know. Usagi shot back. Naruto chuckled. Yeah, but not near as much as you do. Naruto then hugged his mother and took the boxed lunches that she made for the two of them and headed for the door. Bye mom, see you after school. Come on Usagi ni-chan, we'll be late if you don't hurry. Naruto called as he put his shoes on. I'm coming, I'm coming. Usagi shouted as she finally made her way to the front door and threw her shoes on. Bye mom. Usagi called out as she and Naruto left. Bye, dears. Have a good day. Akuko called back inside as she looked at where the two had disappeared from. It had been over 9 years since Naruto had literally fallen into their lives and he had come a long way from the hurt and distressed child that they had found. When he first started living with them, he was rather withdrawn and a bit skittish when interacting with the family. Not surprising considering what he went through before winding up on the cold, wet streets that fateful day. It had taken a lot to finally break the shell he had erected around himself, but when they did it helped tremendously for healing him. Usagi was a big help as she was the only one who would get him to open up at times. There were times when a mother's embrace was needed, when Naruto would suddenly break down as he would sometimes recall his mistreatment. Fortunately Akuko was always there to hold him and calm him down when he did that. Naruto had always swallowed his pain and kept on smiling so that he would not worry those who did care about him, but it was here where he truly felt safe that all of that pain he endured would finally spill out of him. Akuko and Kenji understood that this was a part of the healing process and was always there to support him. Akuko walked out of the kitchen and into the living room. She looked over at a shelf that held many of the family's memorabilias. Among them were a few certain trophies and a picture. The picture showed the Sakino family including Naruto, the boy wearing a karate gi with a black belt while holding up a trophy for winning the tournament. Akuko smiled at the picture and recalled all of his achievements as a young martial artist. Naruto had a habit of fighting when he was younger whenever kids picked on either him or Usagi as he was rather protective of his new family. Naruto was a bit prideful and a little hot-tempered, and this led to several times where he would get into fights with others who would either tease him about his birthmarks, question his strength, or worse yet, act mean towards his sister. There was an instance where a larger kid had teased Usagi about her hair, pulled on it and made her cry in front of Naruto. Needless to say, it would be the last time the kid dared to do that. There were more than a few times when he would come home with several bruises on his body from the scuffles he got into. Of course Kenji and Akuko would be upset with Naruto and scold him for fighting, but they figured his actions were the result of the treatment he received when he was younger. The two decided to enroll him in karate as a way to teach him how to control both his strength and his temper, and it was there that they found he had natural talent for the sport. In no time at all Naruto became an accomplished martial artist, earning his black belt in just 3 years and winning 12 full-contact tournaments since he started his training. His temper was also reined in, much to the relief of his parents. A piece of greenery beside the shelf reminded Akuko that Naruto's talents were not sole in his fists, as he had also developed a skill for growing things. Akuko loved to garden in the backyard, growing flowers as well as vegetables that the family could eat, and it turned out that Naruto had learned to garden while he lived alone as a means to keep himself occupied. Caring for things can help you deal with your own problems. Akuko found it to be a way for them to bond when he first started living with them and the bond grew from there. Akuko glanced out the back window to see the combined effort of their mutual hobby, a beautiful garden with a variety of colorful flowers and delicious-looking veggies. She smiled warmly at all of her adopted son's achievements and how he developed from a reclusive young boy to a fine kind-hearted young man. Streets of Jubin. Meanwhile, said young man and his sister were running down the street towards their school, trying to get there before the tardy bell rang. Naruto glanced back to the girl and beckoned to her. Come on Usagi, hurry up. We're gonna be late. Easy for you to say, you're the one with long legs. Aw man, I'm so sleepy. Why can't today be Saturday? Usagi whined as she let out a yawn. Naruto chuckled a bit. Yeah, it would be great if it was the weekend, but unfortunately for us it's not. Let's just make sure we don't have to stand out in the hall again. Naruto remembered the few times they were late and had to stand in the hall as punishment. Sure, he could always leave early and get there in time, but leaving his sister to suffer was not something he ever considers. Usagi looked up to him. You know, you could always go on ahead of me to make it in time, not that I want you to ditch me or anything. She stated halfway worried that he might do just that. Naruto shook his head and replied, not on your life, Usagi Nichan. I would never let you suffer anything alone as long as I'm around. If you're ever in trouble, I'll be right there to either bail you out or take it with you. Naruto shot his sister his trademark fox grin that made her blush a bit. She felt truly blessed to have a brother like Naruto, even if he was adopted. He was such a selfless person, always putting the needs of others before himself, which was always a plus for any girl. She hoped that someday she would be able to repay him for everything he had ever done for her. Usagi truly loved Naruto as a sibling and as a person. Suddenly their sprint to school was halted when they heard voices around a corner. Hold it still. I'm trying, it keeps squirming around. Hey, let's pull its tail, it might turn into a hamster. Naruto and Usagi looked around the corner to find a group of boys harassing a small black cat, who was desperately trying to escape from its tormentors. Usagi gasped in shock while Naruto narrowed his eyes in anger and drew out a hiss. Naruto did not like seeing people mistreat anything living, human or animal. Just what the hell do you brats think you're doing? Naruto shouted as he ran to the cat's aid. The boys looked up at the advancing blonde fury and made a hasty retreat out of the parking lot. Naruto ran over to the poor feline while Usagi followed and knelt down to check to see if it was hurt. Damn pests. Naruto huffed out as Usagi picked up the black cat and held it out. Are you alright, little kitty? Usagi asked the cat, who started to frantically claw at the two bandages that were adhered to its forehead. Usagi put the cat down as Naruto knelt beside Usagi to check on the feline himself. There, it's okay, I'll get it off, but it might hurt a little. Usagi said as she pulled the bandages away to reveal a crescent moon-shaped mark on the cat's forehead, which began to glow a bright light that nearly blinded the two blondes. The cat's eyes opened up, then it jumped out of Usagi's arms before jumping off of the girl's head, performing a flip in the air, then landed on top of a parked car and turning back to the stunned siblings. The cat stepped towards the two blondes, prompting them to step back. Nice kitty, Usagi said, a little wary of the cat with the strange crescent moon flashlight on its forehead. What the heck is up with this cat? Naruto thought as he stared at the feline. Just then he remembered that they were supposed to be somewhere. Usagi, we gotta go. School's starting. Naruto reminded his sister as he turned to start his sprint again. Usagi turned and cried out, oh no, we're gonna be late. The girl then followed her brother out of the lot and down the street towards school once more. The black cat watched as they ran off. Those two, I'm sure I sensed something in both of them. The cat thought as she focused her senses on the retreating couple. The girl, I'm pretty certain, but that boy. Could he be? The cat then leapt off to confirm her suspicions. Jubin Junior High School. Usagi sighed as she leaned forward over her desk. She and Naruto had managed to make it in time for the bell thanks to a shortcut Naruto had led them through. The day had progressed fairly quickly, despite Mrs. Haruna Sakurada's lengthy lectures that could pass as a church sermon. It was now the lunch period and Usagi couldn't wait to dig into the delicious box lunch that her sweet mother had prepared for her, only to find that the said item was not in her possession. Oh no, I forgot to grab my lunch. What am I gonna eat now? Usagi cried as comical tears started coming out of her eyes. Luckily for her, salvation came in the form of her dear brother. Looking for this, Nichan. Naruto held out her box lunch as Usagi instantly perked up at the sight of her treasured lunch. I figured you were gonna rush out and forget it, so I grabbed it on the way out with mine. Naruto sat the lunch down in front of her, then pulled a chair up to the desk to join his sister for lunch. Usagi looked at Naruto with sparkling eyes and praised him. Thank you, Naruto ni. You're the best brother a girl could ever ask for. Usagi opened the lunch and began to dig in while Naruto did the same with his. They always did enjoy eating lunch together, probably because both just enjoyed eating. It was one of the many things they had in common. In fact, they did so many things together in the same way that many had wondered if they were twins earlier on. Usagi ate her lunch in her usual bliss that she had when eating something she enjoyed. Mom's cooking really is the best, she said as she took another bite of egg roll. Naruto gave a nod as he swallowed his food. It sure is, though I would enjoy it more if it was ramen. Usagi stopped eating for a second to look at Naruto. You know, you eat way too much ramen. What can I say, it's the best food ever invented. I could practically live off the stuff. Usagi's sweat dropped. You already did, she thought as she went back to her lunch. Then Usagi remembered something. Oh yeah, did you hear? The new Sailor V video game is coming out, I saw it on TV. The two were big fans of the actor and both collected a number of merchandise related to her. Suddenly, Mrs. Haruna Sakurada came in with a few test papers in her hand. Usagi, I think you need to focus more on studying and less on TV. Sakurada lectured, having overheard the blonde talking just a second ago. She lifted the test that Usagi had done to reveal several marks on the sheet and a score of 50. There isn't any reason for you to fail this test. Usagi looked shocked at the score she was given. I failed. How could that have happened? She asked. Usagi was not one to take studying seriously, truth be told, but she did study with her brother most of the time, so he was there to help her when she needed it. She was pretty sure that if he wasn't there she would no doubt bomb her test. However, even with his help she would often either fail or barely pass her grades, and staying up to read manga the night before the test didn't help her either. Sakurada handed Usagi the test before giving her orders. Have your mother sign this and return it to me. Usagi paled at the thought of showing her mother that she failed another test. Naruto simply sighed as he watched his sister's antics before commenting. Poor Usagi Nichan, if you had only tried a little harder, you would have done a lot better. Sakurada turned to the blonde boy and gave him a stern look. You're one to talk, Naruto. You may have passed your test, but just barely. Sakurada then presented Naruto his test, which showed a score of 65. You should be taking your own advice and focus on your studies more. Naruto turned away from his teacher and scoffed under his breath. Well, maybe if your lectures weren't so boring I'd pay more attention. Naruto whispered so his teacher would not hear his comment. Unfortunately for him, Sakurada had good hearing. Did you say something? Sakurada asked with a sweet smile on her face, however the black aura that she was radiating promised the blonde boy great pain if he did not give an answer to her question that she approved of. Nothing, Mrs. Haruna, I didn't say a thing. Naruto stuttered out in fear of his teacher. Good, now try studying a little harder for me, okay? Sakurada patted the top of his head before leaving the room. Damn, that woman could be scary when she wanted to be. Later, outside Jubin Junior High. Usagi was depressed. She had failed yet another test and she knew what was going to happen when she got home. Her mother was very strict when it came to studying and had warned her about what would happen if she failed again. Usagi sat down on a curb and sighed. Naruto wanted to do something for his sister. He never did like seeing her in this state, as she is usually a energetic, happy-go-lucky girl, if a bit of a crybaby. Osaka Naru walked over to her childhood friend and spoke up in an attempt to lift Usagi's spirit. Cheer up, Usagi, it was just one test out of many, it's not like it's the end of the world. Naru has been friends with Usagi and Naruto since kindergarten, and not a single day goes by when the three don't have contact with one another in some form. The girl possessed red wavy hair that came down to her shoulders and blue eyes similar to Usagi's. Her mother owns a jewelry store called Osa P Jewelers. Usagi raised her head to her friend with a worried look on her face and replied, Naru, you just don't get it. When mama sees this test I'll get grounded for sure. She'll cut my allowance and I won't get to go to the mall or the movies or be able to play the new Sailor V video game. Naru's sweat dropped as Naruto walked over and sat down next to his sister and placed his hand on her shoulder. Come on, Usagi Nichan, you know I don't like it when you're depressed like this. Would some ice cream make you feel better? My treat. Naruto offered as Usagi turned to him with a small smile on her face. Thank you, Naruto ni, I could use a final meal. Naruto's sweat dropped a little just as a boy walked up to the group. Gurio Yumino was a short boy with brown, spiky hair and wore glasses that were so thick that one could not see through them, which begged to question how the boy himself was able to use them. An otaku and socially awkward boy, Yumino was infatuated with Usagi while he idolized Naruto for being one of the coolest kids in school, according to most of the student population. Hey Usagi-chan, I heard you failed another test. Do you want me to be your tutor? Yumino asked, hoping for a yes from his crush. About as much as I'd like a migraine. Usagi said under her breath. Naru turned to the dorky-looking boy and spoke. Usagi doesn't need a tutor, she needs to get her mind off the test, and I think that ice cream idea is really good. Do you mind if I come along with you too? Naru asked as she turned back to Naruto, who turned and smiled at the redhead. Sure, I don't mind, Naru-chan. You're our friend and it's always good to have friends around. Naruto replied while giving her one of his fox grins. Naru blushed at the blonde boy. There was not a single girl who could withstand Naruto's trademark fox smiles as it made him look impossibly handsome. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Naru said as she averted her gaze. Yumino, completely oblivious to the current mood, decided to put in his 2 cents about studying. What's more important, your grades are a strawberry swirl. Look, I didn't study last night and I got a 95 on my test, how am I supposed to explain this to my parents? Yumino showed his test to the group which caused them to sweet drop. Hey pal, not all of us are freaking geniuses here, besides there is more to life than studying. Naruto stated as he stood up to help Usagi on her feet. Naru nodded with the blonde boy's comment. That's right, there's also things like dancing and shopping. Oh, I know. Let's go over to my mom's jewelry store after we get ice cream. She's got some really wickedly cool stuff in this week. She might even have some stuff for you Naruto, like a silver chain or something you can wear. Naruto nodded, sure, that sounds good. I could use something different to change up my style. The trio then left the school, leaving Yumino to watch as they disappeared from view. Ha ha, left alone again. That's life, I guess. Meanwhile, Negaverse, Dark Kingdom. Inside a dark, ominous castle, in a throne room barren of any god-gifted light, a woman sat on a throne as she gazed into a crystal ball mounted on a staff. The woman had dark red flowing hair that traveled down to her hips and her eyes were red with yellowish sclera. She wore a purple dress that showed her figure as well as a black crown with a crystal in the center. She was a very beautiful woman by all standards, but the aura she radiated spoke of one thing, evil. The woman moved her hands around the orb in front of her as she addressed the large audience of shrouded figures. The oracle has spoken, the time has come for us to rise once more and conquer the human world. Yes, Queen Beryl. The audience spoke out simultaneously. But before we can begin our conquest we must revive our great ruler, Queen Medalia. We must locate the sacred silver crystal of the silver millennium, it has the power to revive her. However, since the crystal is hidden, we must make do with an alternate energy source while we locate the crystal. The humans of Earth have abundant energy, we will use it. Queen Beryl spoke as an image of Tokyo appeared on the crystal ball. Yes, my queen. The audience once again chorused. Jadeite, come forth and present yourself. The queen commanded. Yes, my queen. A voice emanated from within the room as a pillar of blue flame erupted in the center of the room. When the flames died down, a man appeared from the spot bowing down to Queen Beryl. He had short blonde hair and blue eyes with light blue sclera. He wore a military uniform consistent with an officer of high authority. The man lifted his head and spoke. As you have commanded, I have already sent an agent to begin collecting the energy from the humans. I assure you we will have all the energy we require in little time. Beryl looked at her subordinate with scrutiny and spoke. Do not fail me, Jadeite. We must revive Queen Medalia. By your command, my queen. Jubin Shopping District, Osa P. Jewelers. After half an hour and a few ice cream cones the trio of junior high students arrived at the Osa P. Jewelry store, to find quite the commotion going on. A large crowd had gathered at the location and everyone seemed to be excited about something. The group looked at each other briefly before hurrying into the store to find it packed with women young and old all browsing and showcasing the assorted jewelry available. Usagi turned to her friend and spoke out in confusion. Naru, what's going on here? Naru simply shook her head. I haven't a clue. Well, whatever it is, it's got the place hopping. Naruto spoke, adding in his opinion. It was then that Naru's mother appeared through the crowd, calling out to all within earshot. Welcome ladies, this is the chance of a lifetime. Now you can own diamonds, sapphires, pearls, jewels and gems. Today only everything is 90% off. Naru looked over at her mother with a confused look. Gee, my mom is really acting weird today. Yeah, I'll say. Wonder what she put in her coffee this morning. Usagi responded. Naruto chuckled a bit at his sister's comment and spoke. Yeah, maybe we should get mom some, that way she'd always stay in a good mood, even when we do something wrong. Naru's mother continued to make her rounds through the crowd, coercing them into buying her wares. Please feel free to try on anything. Suddenly, a sinister smile made its way onto the woman's face as she began to chuckle under her breath. and surrender your energy to the Dark Kingdom. The woman thought, he inner voice much darker than the voice she used earlier. Unbeknownst to the women wearing the jewelry, the stones they wore began to glow a faint light as the items started to draw in the excessive energy being emitted by the excited crowd. I, Morga, dark disciple and servant of the Dark Kingdom, command that you give all your energy to me. Inside of his lair, Jadeite's laughter echoed throughout the room as he held out his hand and collected the energy being siphoned by his servant. You have done well, Morga. Jadeite thought, using his telepathic link with the Yoma to relay his message. The human's greed is an excellent catalyst to releasing their energy. Continue to gather the energy for the Dark Kingdom and prepare the weak humans for Queen Beryl. As you command, my lord. Morga smiled a wicked smile at both the praise she was receiving and the thought of harvesting more energy from the worthless humans. Mom! A voice cried out from behind Morga, causing the disguised Yoma to tense up before turning around sheepishly to address Naru and her friends. Oh, hello Naru, so nice to see you. Morga spoke in her disguised voice. The trio walked up to the woman and Naru spoke, Mom, my friends and I wanted to see if you had any jewelry and chains we could buy. Do you have any rhinestones, ma'am? Usagi chirped as Naruto simply stood nearby. He couldn't really browse the selections with so many women in the store. The fake mother waved her hand at the two girls and responded, rhinestones. Don't be silly. Help yourself to some diamonds instead, there's plenty to go around. Usagi's eyes glittered at the thought. Diamonds. Any friend of my daughter deserves nothing but the best. I can't believe this. Usagi exclaimed as she cupped her face with her hands. To be honest, Naruto couldn't believe it either, but he decided to wait until he saw what was being offered before he said anything. Moments later, the woman held out a case that held a large and beautiful diamond ring with a retail tag of around 5 grand. Here, Usagi, try this on for size. Oh wow, it's beautiful. Usagi said as she marveled the ring presented to her. Naruto waited in the back of the crowd as he studied the ring from afar. He still wanted to see if there was a catch to all of this. Sure, it was Naru's mother and all, but he always made it a point not to trust salespeople when they are pushing for sales. This is a flawless 20-carat diamond worth $5,000, but for you I'll sell it for 10. Usagi and Naru reeled back as they simultaneously spoke. 20-carat diamond, $10. If everyone wasn't so shocked at hearing that offer, they would have heard Naruto's jaw hitting the floor as he stood there gaping at the woman. That's practically giving the damn thing away. Naruto shouted in his head as his mouth was not really functioning at the moment. Suddenly a very large woman pushed the two girls away as she attempted to purchase the jewel for herself, an action that was repeated by the rest of the crowd as they attempted to obtain the expensive but cheap diamond. Naruto became worried for the safety of his sister and childhood friend as he frantically searched the mob for the two girls. His fear turned to relief when he noticed the two crawling out of the mass of women from under their legs. Are you two okay? Naruto asked as he helped the two ladies to their feet. Yeah, we're fine, Naruto-ni. Usagi replied before the three turned their attention back to Naru's mother. Naru, your mom is acting really weird today. Usagi said as Naru nodded to her best friend. I know, and I'm a little worried about her. I think I need to stay and help her out a bit. Maybe I'll find out what is making her act this way. Naruto agreed and realized that it was getting pretty late. With a sigh he turned to his sister. Usagi-ni-chan, I think it is about time for us to head home. Usagi looked at Naruto and paled a bit. But Naruto-ni, you know what's going to happen when we get home. Mama's gonna want to see the test and then she'll get mad and ground me and then I won't be able to have fun. I know, but there's no sense in putting it off, and she's probably not gonna be too pleased with my results either. Usagi whined a bit as the two said goodbye to Naru and made their way out of the store. Outside, Usagi pulled the test out, grimaced at it and then crumpled it into a ball. There's no way I can show her this. Usagi cried out as she threw the paper ball behind her, much to Naruto's disapproval. Unfortunately, the paper just happened to hit a person right on top of the head. Hey, watch where you're throwing things, dumpling head. Hearing the insult thrown her way, Usagi turned around to see who it was that used the one insult that always riled her up. What did you say? Usagi asked as Naruto also turned as he had heard the comment being directed at his sister. What they got was a tall young man with black hair examining the paper that had hit him. A large sweat drop appeared on his head as he saw the marks and score that was displayed on the test. Wow, this is pretty poor. The man commented while Usagi was upset that he was reading her test. Usagi freaked out a little as she realized that this man was examining something that she was intending to keep private. She really didn't want people to know she did poorly in school. Usagi rushed over and snatched the paper out of the hands of the man, revealing that he was wearing a pair of shades that covered his eyes. Mind your own business, buddy. Usagi spoke sternly as the man just looked at her. Tell me something, with scores like that, were you being lazy or are you just dumb? The man questioned as Usagi was hit with both anger and sadness from the remark as she glared at the man while her eyes began to tear up. Usagi really didn't like being called names, especially being called either dumb or lazy, and the man had just used both in a single sentence. She wasn't the only one losing her cool as Naruto was getting angry with this guy's attitude. Hey pal, don't talk to my sister that way. Naruto said as he walked up to the man. The guy then looked at Naruto and immediately took notice of his birthmarks. Whoa, are those whiskers? What are you, some kind of fox boy? Usagi suddenly tensed up from hearing this. Oh. What did you say? Naruto yelled as he suddenly grabbed the man by the collar of his shirt. Naruto did not like being called anything fox-related since he still remembered his treatment from when he was younger, since his time before he was adopted into the Sakino house. Other than a few people from his past, he would like to totally forget about his life before he came to Tokyo. Say that to me one more time, I dare you. Whoa kid, take it easy. Are you really planning to start something right here in the street? The man tried to reason with the fuming blonde. Naruto looked around as many of the people had stopped to look at the commotion and was looking at the blonde with worried expressions. It didn't take a genius to figure out that he would be in serious trouble if he started swinging his fist right there in front of everyone. With reluctance he let go of the man's shirt and walked back to Usagi. Leave me and my sister alone, pal. Next time, you might not get off so easily. With that, the two began their walk back home. The man watched as the siblings walked away before removing his shades, revealing his blue eyes to the world. That kid sure has a fiery temper. Still, there is something about the two of them. Outside the Game Crown arcade. As Naruto and Usagi made their way back home, they passed by the local arcade, the Game Crown. The Crown was one of their favorite places to come to after school to play games and eat, since it also had a full-sized bar and grill, non-alcoholic drinks, of course. This was also the place where Furuhata Motoki worked. Motoki was a young man with short curly blonde hair and blue eyes, and was almost always seen wearing his work clothes, which consisted of a white dress shirt, pants, and apron. Motoki was one of Naruto's best friends and they were often seen chatting when Naruto was not playing games or eating. Sometimes Naruto would even help out in the arcade for some extra spending money as well as getting a free run at some of the games. Usagi had a deep crush on the blonde, which Naruto knew of and would tease her about it from time to time. At the moment the two would have really liked nothing more than go inside and play around for a bit, however it was already late and they had already spent most of their money for the week, so they had no choice but to pass by and continue on their way home. As they walked past the entrance to the arcade, Usagi caught sight of a poster which showed the new Sailor V video game soon to be released. She stopped and stared at the image of the elegant Sailor V and let out a sigh. Naruto had only made a few steps forward when he noticed that Usagi was not with him, and hearing her sigh made him turn and look at his sister as she stared at the poster. I really wish I could be like Sailor V, she's so beautiful and elegant and smart. Something is always happening in her life. Usagi spoke out to no one in particular, but not really minding that Naruto was listening to her as he walked up beside her. However, the two did not realize that they were not alone, as the black cat that they had rescued earlier was hiding behind a small sign and was watching them carefully. Usagi let out another sigh, only this one was harder as she hung her head as she continued. Who am I kidding? I'll never be anything like her. Naruto looked at her a little sternly and decided to add his opinion. Oi, Ni-chan, don't ever say that. There is nothing in this world that you cannot be. I believe you can do or be whatever you want to be, and don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. Usagi looked up at Naruto. But how can I ever hope to come anywhere close to her? There is nothing special about me, I mean look at me, I'm not smart or elegant or. Usagi's rant was cut short as Naruto grabbed her by her arms and turned her squarely to him as he looked at her with a serious expression. Didn't I just say to stop saying things like that? You are special. You're kind and compassionate and a beautiful girl. You helped me when I needed it the most and helped make me the guy the first time today. He smiled at her before continuing. You are special, Ni-chan, and I know you will succeed in becoming whatever you want to be. Usagi smiled as small tears formed in the corner of her eyes. It was times like this that she was glad to have Naruto in her life. Thank you, Naruto ni. Usagi pulled the test out and re-examined it. Mama's gonna be really mad when she sees this. Well, we'll just have to go through it together, Ni-chan. Come on, let's get home. We've stalled enough. With that, the two continued their trek back home, still unaware that they had been watched the whole time. The black cat moved further out into the open and watched them disappear. I'm certain of it now. That girl is the one. And the boy, I never would have imagined I would find him here. Sakino residence. Usagi, I am very disappointed in you. Akuko was not happy at all at the moment. When her two children came home she greeted them with her usual smile and asked how their day went. After they replied she then asked them about the test they took the day before which caused Usagi to flinch and sweat a little. She was hoping that her mother wouldn't say anything about it and completely forget that they took it, however she knew her mother would always remember these kinds of things, plus the fact that Mrs. Haruna required that her mother sign the test didn't help her either. With great reluctance she handed the test over to her mother and braced herself for the coming judgment. She didn't have to wait long as her mother's usual happy demeanor was replaced with a scowl. I had expected better of you, however it seems you insist on continuing to fail these tests. Usagi looked down in shame. I'm sorry, Mama. Naruto placed a hand on her shoulder, offering some sympathy for his sister. Akuko placed the test aside and looked sternly at her daughter. I warned you what would happen if you failed another test. I'm cutting your allowance and you'll be spending the rest of the day in your room studying. No TV, no video games, no manga, and no dinner if you don't do anything except hit the books. Usagi shot her head back up with tears in her eyes. Ah, Mama, that's too harsh. You're lucky I don't ground you for the week, however if you continue to complain I just might do it. Usagi hung her head in defeat as she slowly trudged upstairs and into her room. Naruto watched as his sister disappeared from view and looked at his mother. Mom, did you have to be so hard on her? I mean, she is improving some all the time. Akuko turned to her eldest son and sighed. Naruto, you need to stop taking her side all the time, you're spoiling her. I can't help it, Mom. You know what it was like for me before you guys took me in. You gave me a home and a family, something that I never had before. I want you all to know how much I love you and how much you guys mean to me. Akuko smiled and walked over to hug her adopted child. I know, sweetie. And I'm glad that you became a part of our lives too. You had gone through so much pain, it was only right that we take you in. You deserve to be loved. Thanks, Mom. Naruto spoke as he held his mother for a few moments, enjoying the feeling of being embraced. The two then broke away and smiled at each other before Akuko spoke once more. And now, Naruto, before I forget. She held out her hand to the blonde boy. Your test, please. URK. Naruto grunted out as he realized it was his turn to take some heat. Later, Osa P. Jewelers. The store was continuing its activities as the women were shopping for the wares that were available to them from the unbelievable sale going on. Every woman present was wearing a piece of jewelry that they had either bought or showcased. Suddenly many of the patrons started to collapse as the jewels they wore glowed brighter with every second. Oh, something is wrong. One of the women stated as she became weak and had to use the counter for support. Why am I feeling so weak all of a sudden? Another woman asked as she started to slump over. I feel so strange. What's happening? Feeling so faint. Oh merciful me! Exclaimed a large woman, the very same one that had pushed Usagi and Naru away earlier that day, as she fell to the floor with a big thud, while the large amount of jewelry she had on scattered across the room from the impact. The store was now littered with women who had collapsed from their energy being drained out. Naru looked around in shock and confusion as the very air itself seems to have had all the energy sucked out of it. Mama, what's wrong with your customers? Why are they all fainting? Naru's mother made no reply as she continued to stare at the scene, her back to Naru. Suddenly, the women began to laugh in a sinister manner that sent a chill up Naru's spine as she looked to her mother with worried eyes. Mama. Slowly the woman turned her head to Naru, revealing a scary, menacing facial expression. I'm not your mother, child. The woman continued to laugh as Naru raised her hand to cover her mouth in shock and fear. Sakino household. Usagi plopped down on her bed exhausted. For the past few hours she hadn't been able to do anything except study, and now it felt like her brain was about to go on strike. She would have liked nothing more than to relax after such a stressful day and enjoy reading her collection of comics and manga, but she had to spend her time hitting the books because of her botched test. Usagi let out a hard sigh as she let her brain cool down from the cram session. Ah man, I'm so tired of studying. A soft knock on the door broke her out of her thoughts as she turned to see the door open and Naruto stick his head into her room. Usagi Nichan, you doing okay? Her brother asked as he entered the room completely and closed the door behind him. Usagi sat up on her bed as she nodded to the boy and replied. Yeah, I'm okay. Just a little tired from everything today. It sure was boring having to study all through the evening. Naruto sat down beside Usagi and scratched the back of his head. Yeah, I'm sure it was. I'm just glad that mom didn't make both of us do it. Naruto spoke as he recalled his mother's reaction to his poor but acceptable test results. Well, at least you didn't fail. But I expect you to do much better next time, Naruto. His mother had said with a stern look, giving him the message that she was not kidding around. A long sigh from Usagi snapped Naruto out of his thoughts as he looked to see her looking a little downcast. What's wrong, Nichan? Naruto ni, it seems like I do nothing but disappoint everyone. I just can't do anything right. She looked up at him with moistened eyes. Do you think I'll amount to anything when I can't really do anything? Naruto's expression turned serious. This again. I told you before that you can be anything you want to be, you just have to have faith in yourself and believe. And if you need any help, I'll be right there to lend you a hand. Usagi allowed a small smile to frame her face. Thank you, Naruto ni. Naruto made his fox smile to his sister. The two were unaware that they were not the only ones in the room as the door to the balcony opened slightly. With a level of stealth the being moved through the room towards the occupants, and it was then that Naruto saw something in the corner of his eye and looked up, causing Usagi to look as well. In the center of the room, looking at the two blondes, was the same cat with the crescent moon mark on its forehead that they had rescued earlier that day. Oh wow, it's the cat we rescued. Naruto spoke as he knelt down from the bed. How did you get in here? Naruto asked as Usagi leaned down to get a closer look at the black cat. Usagi was about to make a comment about her brother questioning an animal, however, the two would receive the shock of their lives when the cat actually answered. Why? Through the window, of course. Quote. Usagi Nichan. Yes, Naruto ni. Did that cat just talk? I think it did. Oh, okay, just making sure it wasn't just me. Naruto spoke as small beads of sweat ran down his face. Usagi's complexion wasn't faring much better. The cat raised her paw up to her mouth and cleared her throat as she began to speak. My name is Luna, and I have been searching for you for a very long time. The cat, now known as Luna, spoke with a slight British accent as she looked at Usagi. You are the chosen one. I am here to guide you to your destiny, as the sailor Senshi of the moon. Usagi was speechless as Naruto looked at the two before speaking to Luna. Wait a minute. Are you saying that you have been looking for my sister because she is a sailor Senshi? Naruto asked, ignoring the fact that he is actually having a conversation with a cat. That is correct, young man. Luna answered as she now turned her attention to Naruto. However, I was a bit surprised to find you here. Naruto blinked a couple of times before pointing to himself. Me? Yes. I was not expecting to find a shadow Senshi during my search for the sailor Senshi. However, this will be of great aid to us. Luna said as she closed her eyes and nodded her head. Naruto raised an eyebrow at Luna. A shadow Senshi. What's that? Luna opened her eyes again and spoke. Allow me to explain. Long ago there existed a great empire that spanned the entire solar system called the Silver Millennium. The seat of that empire was the Moon Kingdom that was built on the Earth's moon. Now the Sailor Senshi were the guardians of the Silver Millennium. Each planet had a Senshi to protect it. While the Earth itself had no Senshi to represent it, the Moon did, and it was the Senshi of the Moon that protected both Earth and Moon in times of need. Now while the Sailor Senshi were seen as the warriors and protectors of the Silver Millennium, they were not alone, as a secret group of warriors also existed that fought alongside the Sailor Senshi, only they did so from the shadows. These warriors were known as the Shadow Senshi. Very few knew of their existence, as they only revealed themselves when they were needed the most. As far as I know, you are the last Shadow Senshi in existence, as the others were lost in a great battle long ago. Naruto stood there for some time while he absorbed and processed the information given to him. Finally he spoke. Wow, that's a lot to take in. But how do you know we are who you say we are? I don't remember ever being a Shadow Senshi. Usagi stood up and walked over to Naruto as she also spoke out. Yeah, and how do you know I'm this Sailor Senshi of the moon? I'm just a normal girl. Luna stood on all four legs as she looked at the two. The reason you two don't remember is because you were both Senshi in your past lives, as you are both reincarnations of the Senshi. And as far as knowing that you two are Senshi, well, showing you will be a lot quicker than explaining it. And with that, Luna jumped into the air, performed a backflip, and from the trail of light she released behind her came two items, a golden brooch and a silver necklace. The two items fell to the floor in front of their respective owners, with Usagi getting the brooch and Naruto receiving the necklace. Usagi picked up the brooch and examined the item. It was golden with a crescent moon etched into the bottom part of the front facing, 4 small gems of red, blue, green, and yellow embedded into the rim, and 1 larger pink gem embedded just above the moon. Usagi smiled as she examined the brooch and spoke out excitedly. Wow, it's so pretty. How should I wear it? Luna's sweat dropped a little as she watched Usagi attach the brooch to the large ribbon on her uniform and then proceeded to model the accessory in front of a mirror. What do you think, Naruto ni? Looks good on you. Naruto replied as he turned his attention to the item he received. The necklace was simple enough looking, with a long silver chain that wasn't thin enough to be fragile but was not too thick for it to appear out of style. A single piece of silver as large as a coin hung in the center of the chain. A crescent moon etched into the metal similar to Usagi's brooch was shown with a single white gem affixed above the moon. Naruto examined the necklace before smiling himself and turned his attention back to Luna. This is a nice necklace, Luna. Thank you for the gifts. You're welcome. Luna responded with a smile before becoming serious again. Now then, these items are very special. They contain the power you will need to fight the dark forces that threaten to destroy this world. As Senshi, you are both charged with defending it. Usagi got stars in her eyes as realization dawned on her. I get to be a pretty Sailor Senshi fighting evil just like Sailor V. I must be dreaming. Naruto sighed a little as he watched his sister's antics. This whole situation seemed completely unbelievable. Well, for Naruto, he had already experienced things that would be considered unbelievable, like being sent to another dimension by a guy wearing bandages performing ninja arts with hand signs and seals, so why would this situation be any different? Finally resigning himself to the situation, Naruto spoke to Luna once more. Alright, so how do we use these things? I hope we don't have to do some weird pose while shouting out some strange command. Naruto thought back to an American television show he once saw about a group of teenagers who transformed into Kamen-looking superheroes who were named after prehistoric lizards. The boy shuddered a little at the thought of having to do something like that. I'm glad you asked, Naruto. Luna answered as she walked towards Usagi. Yes, you do have to call out a command, but you won't have to pose or anything. That comes later. Now Usagi, repeat after me. Usagi's attention became completely focused on Luna. Moon Prism Power, Makeup. Usagi nodded and then spoke in a commanding voice. Moon Prism Power, Makeup. As the power of the brooch awakened, Usagi found her clothing being dissolved away as large threads of red silk emerging from the brooch and began to wrap themselves around her body. Once the silk completely covered a segment of her body, they transformed into garments. Her chest and stomach were covered with a skin-tight sailor-style fuku with a red bow located on the front of her chest and on the indention of her back, as well as a blue skirt which flowed down and ended at half-thigh. Her legs were covered with knee-high red boots with a white border at the triangle top. Her arms were covered with white gloves that stopped at her elbows with red borders. Two round red accents with white borders appeared on the front of the ball-shaped hair strands. A red choker with a crescent moon emblem wrapped around her neck and earrings appeared, also with crescent moon emblems. Finishing off the transformation was a golden tiara with a red jewel that affixed itself on her forehead. Sakino Usagi had for the first time transformed into the pretty Sailor Senshi, Sailor Moon. Whoa! Naruto exclaimed as witnessed his sister's transform. It was both shocking and slightly disturbing for him as he was briefly presented with Usagi's body being bare of clothing. Adding to it was the fact that what she was wearing now was quite form-fitting as well, and the short skirt didn't leave much for the imagination. Usagi was also shocked as she studied her new appearance. Oh, wow. Is this for real? Everything's just getting weirder by the second. Pleased that the girl had successfully activated the power of the brooch, Luna turned her attention to Naruto, who still had a bit of a blush on his face. Now it's your turn, young man. In order to activate your powers you merely need to call out lunar power, transformation. Naruto snapped out of his slight stupor as he looked at Luna, then examined his necklace. He studied it for a second before turning his attention back to the small black cat. Are you sure about this? You know it would be kind of embarrassing if nothing happened, or worse I end up wearing something similar to my sister. Naruto spoke as he briefly imagined himself in a sailor fuku and skirt, the image only existing for a brief moment in his mind before he banished it but shuddered a bit before it ceased to exist. Usagi and Luna both had similar thoughts and actions as they too visualized the image. Heavens, no. I assure you that you will be wearing proper garments. At least, I hope you will. Luna added in her mind. Studying the necklace one last time, Naruto sighed and nodded. All right then, here goes nothing. And with that Naruto braced himself and spoke out the words. Lunar power, transformation. The necklace began to glow white before it shattered into thousands of pieces of light. Naruto's form became completely encased in a shroud of shadow as the pieces of light began to spin around him in a whirlwind. The light began to stick to the shroud as it gathered and take form, creating the silhouette of a cloaked figure. Finally, in a flash the light broke away revealing Naruto in his shadow senshi form. Naruto's clothing consisted of a white robe that covered his upper body as well as his arms and traveled down loosely to his knees with a split in the front below his waist and slits on the sides and back to allow his legs freedom of movement, which were covered by long white pants. A long red sash was wrapped around his waist with the ends hanging at the front and the back and was held in place by a large leather belt that had several pouches attached along the length. His hands were covered with fingerless gloves while the forearms were armored with elbow-length silver arm guards. On his feet were a pair of leather boots that came up to mid-calf while his lower legs were also armored with silver greaves that were held from above his ankles and stopped at his knees. The last piece of armor he wore was a silver shoulder plate that was affixed on his left shoulder by 3 leather straps, one traveling underneath his right arm before connecting with the back side of the plate while the other 2 straps connected the plate to the right side of his belt from the points where the first strap was connected. His head was covered with a hood that resembled the shape of an eagle's beak as the hood hid his hair and ears but allowed his face to be seen, however only his eyes were visible as his lower face was coated with a white mask. At the tip of the hood positioned over Naruto's forehead was a diamond-shaped silver plate with the moon symbol engraved in the metal. Overall, aside from the silver armor pieces, Naruto looked like a medieval assassin. 1. Usagi and Luna stared in awe as they gazed at the newly transformed teen boy while Naruto took stock in his new appearance in a mirror. Hey, not bad. This is actually pretty cool. Naruto stated as he continues to examine his new attire. Wow, Naruto ni. That looks good on you. Usagi spoke when she finally snapped out of her stupor. Luna nodded in agreement with the blonde sailor senshi. Indeed, you look quite charming. Thanks, guys. Naruto said as he finished his inspection. It was then that Usagi began to think about their current state. Wow, who would have thought something like this would happen? I turn into a beautiful sailor senshi and Naruto ni becomes a handsome white assassin. The amazing superhero siblings, Sailor Moon and N. It was then that the girl came to a realization. Hey, what is your name, by the way? Naruto turned to his sister slightly confused. Huh. I mean, if I'm Sailor Moon then what does that make you? Usagi turned to Luna to see if she had the answer. Do you know what he's called, Luna? The cat closed her eyes for a moment while she thought about it until she looked back and responded with a shake of her head. No, I don't have a name for him. I know that the Senshi were named after their respective homes but the Shadow Senshi are not as well known due to the nature of their existence. Naruto thought it over. Well, that's not good. I can't just run around like this being called Naruto. Kind of defeats the whole purpose of a disguise, doesn't it? Naruto turned back to the mirror as he thought about what he would go by in this form. He looked over himself and noted the armor pieces that covered the various parts of his body kind of resembled the armor that European medieval knights wore. He also thought about his transformation and the command he gave out. Suddenly a name appeared in his mind, and the more he thought of it, the more it seemed right to him. With a nod of his head, he decided. I know what I will be known as. Naruto spoke as he walked over to the balcony door. Both Usagi and Luna hummed out as they watched the cloaked teen step in front of the door before turning to face them. I am the Lunar Knight, Naruto proclaimed as he stood in a majestic pose, the light of the full moon entering the windows added to the effect. Once more Usagi and Luna found themselves staring in awe of the figure before them. Help me. Somebody, please. Help me. Usagi was suddenly jarred out of her staring when the accents on her hair sudden began to blink and a distressed voice entered her ears, only what shocked her was that she recognized the voice. Naru. What is it, Usagi ni? I heard Naru's voice just now. And she was calling for help. You serious? Naruto tensed up as he listened to his sister's statement. Suddenly a sensation came over him as he began to feel something. The presence he was apparently detecting seemed to belong to something dark and menacing. As he concentrated on the sensation he found that he could determine the general direction of the source as well as an idea of how far away the presence was located. I sense something, and it seems to be located somewhere in the shopping district. Naruto turned to the door again and focused his senses on the aura he was feeling. And whatever it is, it's not friendly. Luna's expression became serious. It seems that the enemy has already made its move, and it looks like your friend Naru is caught in the middle of it. Usagi gasped as she instantly became worried for her best friend's well-being. Oh no, what are we gonna do? Simple, my dear sister. Naruto spoke as he pushed open the doors. We go there, save her and stop whatever the hell that thing is. Naruto looked back over his shoulder at the two with determined eyes. Sailor Moon, Luna, let's go. Okay. Usagi nodded as she began to follow her brother out of the room. Luna stared at the cloaked warrior for a moment before nodding with a hum to herself. She was quite impressed with the way that the boy seemed to be taking charge of the situation. And with that the trio leapt out of the room and into the night as they raced to assist their distressed friend. Osa P. Jewelers. Naru had never been so scared or confused in her entire life. One moment she was helping her mother tend the store and the next all the costumers began to faint while her mother simply watched with a disturbing grin on her face. And now said mother had both her hands around the poor girl's neck as she attempted to squeeze the very life out of her. Stop. Please, stop mama, stop. Morga merely chuckled at the girl. I told you before, I'm not your mother. And as if to prove her point the woman began to change. Her entire body began to wither and wrinkle as her hair that was once a smooth and wavy red became a mess of sickly dark brown and her blue eyes morphed into yellow irises with black sclera. A cross-shaped scar appeared on her forehead and her dress turned from purple to black. Naru became terrified of the sight as she continues to struggle with her tormentor. Who are you? What have you done with my mother? The Yoma cackles as she tightens her grip on the redhead's throat. Your mother is in the basement but I'm afraid she is a little incapacitated at the moment. But don't worry dear, you'll be seeing her soon, in the afterlife. Ha 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 ha. Let her go. Morga turns her head around a complete 180 degrees showing that she was indeed an inhuman creature as she focused her attention to the origin of the voice. Who's there? Standing at the front door with the moon visible behind her, Sailor Moon poised herself for action. I said let her go. Morga narrowed her eyes as she took in the blonde's appearance. And who are you? Sailor Moon blinks for a second in thought. Me. Sailor Moon then goes into her series of poses. I'm Sailor Moon, champion of justice. And in the name of the moon, I will punish you. Sailor Moon, huh. Never heard of ya. Last warning, creep. Let the girl go. Sailor Moon declared as she took a brave step forward. Morga turned the rest of her body around as she loosened her grip on Naru's throat but still kept a good hold on her. The Yoma grinned mockingly at the heroine before replying. You, demanding something of me. Now that's really cute. Do you honestly think that you can take me on alone? Who said that she was alone? Wah. The Yoma attempted to turn her head to see where this new voice came from. Crack. Asterisk. Only to find a gloved fist being rammed into the side of her face. Guha. Morga was sent flying from the force of the punch into one of the jewelry displays that shattered, sending glass and phony jewelry in all directions. The sudden departure of the sucker-punched Yoma had sent Naru airborne, but before she could fall back down she was caught bridal style by a pair of strong arms. As the redhead's body settled into the embrace, her eyes began to flutter open and she was met with a pair of cerulean blue eyes. She blinked as she focused her vision until she could see who was holding her. The being wore a white hooded robe and mask and had several pieces of silver armor secured to various places on his body. And speaking of bodies, Naru became very aware of the firm muscles on this person if the blush on her face was any indication. Are you alright? Lunar Knight spoke as he examined the girl in his arms. Was the only response Naru could make as she continued to stare into her savior's eyes. Good. Let's get you out of harm's way then. The masked hero then proceeded to take Naru to a spot where she would not be caught up in the fight that was to come. Sailor Moon smiled as she saw Naru being taken to somewhere safer. When they first arrived at the store, they looked through one of the windows to find the girl in the clutches of the disguised Yoma and watched it as it dropped its facade and strangled the helpless redhead. They quickly made a plan where Sailor Moon would distract the monster while Lunar Knight snuck in and freed Naru. She was very pleased to see that the plan had gone off without a hitch and now Naru was out of danger. Morga was finally able to pull herself out of the display as she shook her head clear of cobwebs and glared hatefully at the white figure. Who the hell are you? The Yoma shouted as she rubbed the side of her face which now sported a rather large bruise from the punch. The man sat Naru down beside one of the columns inside the store and turned back to the Yoma with his eyes shut as he took a casual pose. Who am I? He asked as he opened his eyes to meet the Yoma glare. I am the protector of the innocent. I am the shadow of the moon. The one who silences those who hail from the darkness. He throws his hand out in a grand gesture. I am the Lunar Knight. And in the name of the moon, I will silence you. Lunar Knight finishes his pose with a finger pointing straight at the Yoma. Believe it. Morga growled as she extended her claws. The only thing I believe is in your demise. The Yoma cried out as she charged the masked warrior. Sailor Moon, keep an eye on the girl. Lunar Knight called out as he too charged into battle. Sailor Moon walked over to her friend as she positioned herself between the redhead and the fight but turned her head to look back and smiled. Don't worry, we'll take care of this. Just believe in us. She spoke before giving the girl a wink. Naru stared at her before finally nodding her head. There was just something about these two that made her want to put her faith in them, like she knew everything was gonna be alright if she believed in them. Sailor Moon turned her attention back to the battle, making sure that no harm befell her friend. Meanwhile, Morga was having a rather difficult time with the masked warrior as she swiped and thrust her clawed hand trying to damage her opponent who was doing a great job of blocking, parrying, and dodging her strikes. Stand still, damn you. The Yoma cried out as she took another swipe at the shadow senshi who simply leaned back to avoid the attack. Yeah right. Like I'm really gonna let her take my head off. Lunar Knight thought as he continued to dance around the frustrated foe. My strength and reflexes seem to have been enhanced. Let's just see how much. As Morga attempted another stab, Lunar Knight brought his left arm up to block, allowing the Yoma's claws to glide over the arm guard before throwing the arm outward, giving the senshi a perfect opportunity to retaliate. Lunar Knight pulled his fist back and sent a straight punch into Morga's stomach, effectively knocking the wind out of her as spit was sent flying from her mouth. He then followed up with a jab and cross to the face and then an uppercut to the chin, making the Yoma stagger backwards. The Senshi finished his combo by rotating his body around and throwing his leg out, performing a spin heel kick to the side of the Yoma's face and sending her into another display case. Sailor Moon and Naru watched in awe as the male Senshi dominated the fight. The way he fought looked almost like a dance as he moved from one attack to another. Luna, who was watching above from a high window sill, was also impressed with the boy's fighting skills. She had never expected to find a Shadow Senshi in her quest to locate Sailor Moon and was not too sure of how he would aid them in the fight with the Dark Kingdom. Now she was very thankful that she had found him. Morga pulled herself out of the case as she now sported 2 large bruises on her face, one on each side. Grr. You'll pay for this. Still kicking, huh? Well, come on. I got plenty more for ya. Lunar Knight taunted as he prepared himself for another round. Ha. You think you're pretty strong, huh? Well, let's see how you handle an army. Morga raised her arms in the air. Arise, my slaves, heed your master's call and do my bidding. Crush these fools. Suddenly all of the unconscious customers began to rise as the gems on their bodies glowed. The 2 Senshi and civilian found themselves in quite a tight spot as Morga rose in the air from behind the crowd of zombie shoppers. Ha 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 ha. Not so cocky when you're outnumbered. Now my slaves, attack. And with that, the mob rushed forward to accomplish their gruesome task. Lunar Knight used every ounce of his skill in order to avoid the charging horde of women as he ducked and weaved around his attackers while executing precision strikes in order to knock them out of the fight without harming them too much. Sailor Moon watched as her brother tried his hardest not to be overpowered by the mob when she noticed one of the women, the large one that happened to push her when she was at the store earlier, was charging straight at her. Now normally a teen who finds herself in a situation like this would panic and do something reckless, however when your sibling is a martial arts expert for many years you don't get by without learning a few things, or in this case, a few moves. When the large woman was almost on top of her, Sailor Moon sidestepped to avoid the charge. She then grabbed the woman's arm on top of the wrist and under the shoulder before pulling downward and back to make the woman flip over, and with her own forward momentum propelling her, the woman went sailing through air and landed with a loud thud on the floor and passed out. Alright. I did it. Sailor Moon cheered as she hopped up and down, excited in the fact that she pulled off one of her brother's moves. She was so distracted by her victory that she failed to notice another zombie shopper approaching her from behind. Sailor Moon, look out! Naru screamed when she saw the attack coming. Sailor Moon snapped out of her revelry and turned in time for the woman to collide with her, sending her to the floor with a bruised posterior and ego. The Sailor Senshi winced as she rubbed her backside and quickly found herself as the target for another attacker who intended to finish the girl off. Lunar Knight was busy trying to stay in one piece as he dealt with wave after wave of possessed patrons when he saw the attack on his sister. Shit! The Senshi exclaimed internally, seeing the girl about to get torn apart. As another woman tried to grab him, Lunar Knight jumped up in the air and landed on the assailant's back, and using her as a springboard propelled himself across the room, landing in between Sailor Moon and the attacking woman before spinning around and landing a palm strike to the woman's midsection, sending her flying backwards into another group of advancing zombies. The trio now found themselves completely surrounded on 3 sides with a wall to their back as the mob slowly advanced upon them. At this point the Lunar Knight was starting to tire from the fighting as his breathing became heavy. There's still so many of them. The cackling from above drew their attention once more to the Yoma, who had been watching as the 2 Senshi struggled. Ha 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 ha. You all look so pathetic and helpless, it almost hurts to watch this. Now be good little children and die for me. Lunar Knight stood defiantly as he stared at the Yoma, his eyes burning with determination. There is no way we're gonna let you win, you old fossil. As long as there is a single breath in our bodies, we will fight. Oh please, do you really think you can fight against the power of the Dark Kingdom? Face it, kid. You're finished. The only one who's finished around here is you. You're going down. Insert Naruto main theme. As his words left his lips, the crescent moon emblem on the hood of his robes began to glow with a white light. As if he was being guided by an unseen force, the Lunar Knight's hands came together with both sets of index and middle fingers extended, creating a cross shape. He felt his energy flare up, more energy than he ever thought he could possess. Then out of nowhere, a thought came to his mind, one that felt overwhelming to him. Neither able to resist the urge or want to, Lunar Knight shouted. Kage Bushin no Justu. 2. Suddenly the entire store was enveloped in a plume of smoke while the air vibrated with a ringing sound. As the smoke cleared, everyone was completely shocked to find not one but 20 lunar knights now standing in front of the mob poised for battle. Morga. What the hell? Sailor Moon. No way. Naru. Oh my god. Luna. Incredible. Let's go. And with that the squad of lunar knights lunged forward and tackled the mob of women. In a short time span all the possessed women were either incapacitated or immobilized by the lunar knight copies. Morga looked frantically around trying to make sense of the situation as she was now without her slave army. How can this be? They're all solid copies. Morga had known a lot of Yoma in her life and each one had their own unique abilities, but she has never heard of a being who had the power to make solid clones of itself. I told ya you were going down. The sudden outburst drew her attention up above her. She was greeted with the sight of 2 lunar knights flying towards her with their fists cocked back, the left one with his right fist and vice versa. Now it's your turn to kiss the floor. But before that, Morga could only stare wide-eyed as the 2 masked senshi copies barred down upon her. Quote ellipsis dot. Kiss my fist. With that the 2 copies threw their punches right into the Yoma's face as both made contact simultaneously. The force of the attack sent the Yoma flipping end over end downward where she bounced off the last display case and slammed into the wall. Morga managed to peel herself off the wall and remain on her feet, but that was about all she could do as she staggered back and forth trying to remain standing. Green blood dripped from her face as her nose had been crushed and a few teeth had been knocked out. Yeah, this Yoma has definitely seen better days. Sailor Moon had managed to get to her feet at some point and watched the whole event take place. She couldn't believe that her brother possessed such an incredible ability. It was then that Luna came running up and spoke to the senshi. Sailor Moon, now is your chance to end this. Huh. The girl replied as she turned her attention to the black cat. Me. What can I do? Besides, it looks like the lunar knights got this one handled. I'm afraid that he has used up too much energy in the battle to finish her. It's up to you now. Use your tiara. Call out, Moon Tiara action, and throw it. Sailor Moon looked at the cat as she thought about it. She was a little bit skeptical of the idea that her tiara could end the fight. However, her brief thoughts were interrupted when a familiar voice called to her. Sailor Moon. The senshi looked up to find one of the lunar knights standing only a few feet nearby as he looked at the injured Yoma. The warrior turned his head to look at the sailor senshi before raising his hand up to give her a thumbs up. You got this one. Do it. The senshi stood for a second as she processed her brother's request. Then with a nod of her head, she responded. Okay. Sailor Moon removed the tiara from her head which then converted itself into a disc of light. She then brought her bearings on the Yoma as she cocked her arm back. Moon Tiara action. As she spoke the words she let the disc fly like a frisbee. Morga had gained enough of her senses back to become conscious of the incoming projectile but didn't have the strength to defend against it, so she did the only thing she could do. She screamed. Ooh-ah h. As the disc connected with her the entire room was filled with light showing the silhouette of the Yoma, but as the light died down the Yoma's body was revealed to have been converted into a stone-like statue which soon after crumbled away into a pile of dust and disappeared. End music. As the Yoma vanished the various gems and jewels on the customers shattered and the influence over them ceased. Inside his lair Jadeite was continuing to gather energy when he suddenly felt the flow reverse itself and all the energy he collected simply vanished into thin air. What? Someone has interfered with my plans, and they will pay dearly for it. Since the customers were no longer being controlled, all of the Kage Bushin lunar knights vanished in puffs of smoke, leaving the original with the 3 other beings in the room. Sailor Moon walked over to the spot where the Yoma had been destroyed and marveled at the memories of their first battle as well as her own ability. Wow, did I really do that? She asked as the lunar knight walked up to her and put a hand on her shoulder. You did. And I'm proud of you. You did an amazing job. The lunar knight assured her, and even though his mouth was covered by a mask, she could tell that he was smiling at her. Thank you, lunar knight. Sailor Moon smiled as she responded to his praise. It always felt so good when her brother praised her like that. Ah! The sudden sound caught the duo's attention as they turned to find Naru standing behind them. Quote ellipsis dot. Thank you for saving me. But, just who are you? Lunar Knight turned around to face her and looked right into her eyes, causing her to blush a little at the memories of being held by the man. You know who we are. Naru blinked in confusion. I do. Lunar Knight chuckled a bit before replying. Just you friendly, neighborhood senshi. Naru became even more confused by that statement, but before she could question him further, Lunar Knight turned around and walked towards one of the open windows. Sailor Moon, it's time to go. And with that, he leapt into the night. Sailor Moon turned to the redhead and bowed. It was nice meeting you. See ya. Then she leapt out the window as well. Naru stood there watching the spot where the two had vanished, her mind reeling with questions about what had happened and who the two warriors are and more importantly if she would ever see them again. She had no idea what fate had in store for her. Unaware to any of them, a lone figure had been watching the entire ordeal from the shadows. The figure stepped out into the light to reveal himself to be a tall man with black hair wearing a tuxedo and hat with a white mask across his eyes. The man looked out into the night sky as he took stock in what he had witnessed. I guess my help wasn't needed this time after all. But still, what was with that guy's ability? I've never even heard of something like that before. Having much to think about, the man turned and disappeared. However, he was not aware that he had been detected. Streets of Jubin. The moment he left the jewelry store, Naruto had sensed the presence of another being nearby, and as he waited for both Usagi and Luna to catch up to him, he focused his senses on the presence so he could commit it to memory should he ever sense the presence again. It wasn't long before both Usagi and Luna joined up with him, and as they walked up, Usagi noticed that Naruto was staring rather intensely in the direction of the store. What's wrong, Naruto ni? Naruto snapped out of his gaze and looked at his sister and smiled under his mask. Oh, it's nothing. Just thinking about the fight is all. Naruto fibbed so as not to worry the two. They all had a pretty tiring day and the last thing he wanted was for them to stress about something they couldn't do anything about. Yeah, that was some fight, wasn't it? But that was really incredible the way you fought, Naruto ni. I've never seen anything like it. Luna nodded her head in agreement with the sailor senshi. Indeed. That was quite the display of skill and power, young man. You handled that battle exceptionally well. Naruto stood up straight with his fists resting on his hips and spoke. Yeah, well, I'm just awesome like that. Usagi and Luna couldn't help but both laugh and sweat drop at the statement. Naruto then turned to Usagi and put a hand on her shoulder again. But let's not forget your part in the fight either. You did very well in there, and I am very proud of you, Usagi Nichan. Luna nodded in agreement. Usagi smiled as she reflected upon those words. She had finally done something that she didn't totally mess up, and in doing so she helped save many lives. That was something to always be proud of. Naruto turned around and started to walk again while calling back. Let's go home, you guys. It's getting late and we got school in the morning. Usagi quickly became downcast at the mention of the word, school. Ah man, why does it have to be a school night? And I still gotta deal with Miss Haruna in the morning too. Usagi grumbled as she started her walk back home as well. Luna merely sighed as she listened to the girl's complaints. She may be a sailor senshi, but she was still a teenage girl. Her thoughts turned to the blonde boy and the amazing abilities he possessed. Never in her wildest dreams did she think she would find someone of his caliber, and as she moved along to what would be her new home with her wards, she wondered what other surprises was in store for them all. She also had no idea what fate had in store for them and many others.